Well, for those who are present today, you're about to witness my very first Devar Torah. I did a teaching at my bat mitzvah, but I wrote a poem instead. And so here I am this morning. However, this was a fascinating parsha to unpack. I did a lot of reading. I think you could tell a little bit over the course of the Torah service itself. And I think we all have a pretty good idea kind of what's going on in this parsha, right? However, the theme of my teaching this morning is what really kind of bugged me about it. What's driving Korach? What's driving and motivating the people to rebel? Often when I read from the Torah, I think of how human the people are. You know, how relatable. I mean, we're reading a text that's very old, ancient, still written in scroll form. If you believe it's Sinai, from Sinai, if you believe it was compiled later on, whatever it is, the stories are relatable and the behavior of the people in them is very relatable. We have a power struggle going on. We've got Korach. Korach has this very special job. Him and his family are in charge of transporting the Mishkan, the tabernacle. It's a pretty good job. It's pretty important, you would think. It's probably one of the most important jobs out there. He's a Levi. He was exempt from the golden calf incident, so maybe he feels like he was a little bit better than Aharon, maybe better suited to be the high priest, maybe. We've got Datan and Aviram with some feelings of jealousy going on. They're descended from the tribe of Reuven, so firstborn, maybe they're entitled to that role, maybe it's not fair, maybe that's what they're feeling, I don't know. But whatever it is, there's a lot of blame going on, and there's a lot of unrest among the people, and things still remain uncertain. The Talmud teaches us that no two faces are alike, and no two opinions are alike. And this is one of the magical things about being Jewish, because as we all know, our meetings could go on forever when we're wrestling with a really good topic. And this is one of the beautiful parts of being human. However, there's something off about what's going on here, right? I mean, Adonai obviously is not pleased with this rebellion, and things are very divisive. Often these days we think majority rules. If everybody thinks so, then it's right. But I think anybody who's studied history knows better, you know? Often we tend to go along with things that may not be good for us. Rambam says we should take a look at the context. So I'm going to bring us into the context. For anybody who was here last week, we read Parshat Shalach. Parshat Shalach has this story of the scouts. I like the word scouts better than spies. The scouts sent to scout out the land of Israel. They come back, right? Anybody who was paying attention knows. Only 2 of the 12 spies had good things to say. The rest of the 10 came back and spread, negative gossip. This is another one where I called someone Israeli. I said, what does dibat translate as? It's not just speaking. It's speech that's gossip. It's negative. It's twisting things in a negative direction. So they spread these rumors about the land that is filled with giants. It's unconquerable. Only 2 out of the 12 saw the land and felt hope instead of fear. And I think often when human beings were facing into the unknown, it's kind of how we feel, you know? It's scary doing something new. It's scary having an uncertain future. And that episode in the Torah, it ends with, unfortunately, rebuke, right? For each of the days that the spies scouted the land turns into a year for each one of the Jewish people who were not appreciative of the land and the opportunity, right? And they're never to see the land of Israel. Only Caleb and Yehoshua make it. The rest of Bnei Israel, they don't get to see the promised land. They don't get there. So people are probably unhappy already. I'd imagine that wasn't very good news to hear. And yet they're blaming Moshe. They blame Aharon. They don't think this has anything to do with Adonai, right? It blows my mind. And yet this is very human. It is. Right? Things are not going our way. Let's go with somebody else. Maybe this guy will get me what I want, right? Maybe he'll take me where I want to go. As somebody who's with diverse interests, you might be interested to know that in university I studied everything from history, myths, magic, and shamanism, women in ancient Israel, to psychology. That was eventually what I got my BA in. And so I took a take on this in terms of what's driving them. And to me, I think there's something very important in today's world to draw out of this whole concept of negativity bias. Unfortunately, we are wired not to be positive, actually, to be the exact opposite. We're wired to be negative. There's an asymmetry in how we process negative and positive occurrences in the world. And negative events elicit more rapid and more prominent responses than non-negative events. And to me, this helps to explain why B'nai Israel, no matter what Adonai does, no matter what's happening, they still are panicked, and they're negative, and they don't know what to do, and they're not really able to calm down and focus on the beautiful possibilities that face them in the future, if they could just be driven by hope, by love, and move forwards. As human beings, we dwell on insults more than compliments. We respond more to aversive stimuli. I'm sure we've all experienced this. Has anybody ever had one bad thing happen in a day and had a hard time shaking it off? Yeah, there's some laughter coming in from the right. This is very human. These are things that we all experience. One thing that I've always found very powerful about Judaism and about our teachings is the built-in systems to help shape us, to focus on the good in our lives. If you've ever paid attention to what we're doing in the Siddur, we're not kvetching. We're not. We're expressing gratitude, right? Thankfulness to the universe. Sometimes people use fear and negativity bias in order to elicit a certain response from people, to get them on board with their plans. And as human beings, we have to be careful of this, right? We live in a world where people use words in all kinds of different ways to get us to respond in all kinds of different ways, whether it be to buy things, to vote. What should we be afraid of, rather than being grateful? And when I was looking at Korach, and I was looking at Moshe and Aharon, or Yehoshua and Kalev, how they lead is remarkably different than what's going on with Korach. They're fighting with positivity. No matter what B'nai Israel does, Moshe and Aharon are falling on their faces, pleading with God, please, don't give up on them. Please don't give up on them. Please give them another chance. It's going to be okay. Still, and I would think after all of the rebellions and all of the kvetching, and there was a lot of kvetching after leaving Egypt, right? There's this repetitive line about, it would have been better if we'd stayed in Egypt rather than wandering in the wilderness. It would have been better if we'd have died in Egypt than being in this situation. There's a lot of kvetching. It must be getting old after a while. But nevertheless, Aharon and Moshe, they stick with B'nai Israel. They try to continue to lead and move forwards in a positive direction. And so, mercy. What does our tradition teach us in order to deal with all of these negative things? What does our tradition teach us about God? In Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 22, we come across Adonai, Adonai, right? Bechanun, right? And so what is it? Well, one of the most impactful readings I read at shul was in the Sim Shalom Siddur. There's always space for study at the morning Minyan, right? And there were these 4 paragraphs in the old Sim Shalom, and I don't think I'm the only person that they impacted in a positive way, but I'll read it to you. Walk in God's ways. This is what we're supposed to be doing as Jewish people, walking in God's ways. Gracious, compassionate, patient, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, assuring love for 1,000 generations, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, and granting pardon. And so, when you lead with these qualities, you walk with the universe. You walk towards healing and wholeness. But I think the reason that Vav of Korach was bent at the beginning of this parsha in the Czech scroll, I think it's pointing to something. He was going the wrong way. Vav isn't just any letter. Vav is a part of Adonai's name. Yud, He, Vav, He. If you're walking with God, you're walking straight. You're walking towards love and healing and wholeness. If you're walking towards dissent, if you're walking towards fear and negativity and manipulation, and you're not believing in all of the blessings that surround you, if you can look at a beautiful day and only find something to kvetch about, you're not really walking with God. You're going to the side. And so I hope that as human beings, we can move towards our best qualities, because there's really a lot of inspiration everywhere to draw on. And hopefully in tough times, when things are divisive, we can remember it's okay to question. It's okay to debate, to be respectful. We should. If something's important and you care, you're going to debate about it. But don't be driven by fear. be driven by love. Shabbat Shalom.